there's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites.
Number 24 is Content Farms in Macedonia.
Бидејќи ако се направи грешка, таа ќе биде кобна. Нема враќање назад.
So Europe need to remain more sexy lady in the world.
Ајде, мајката!
Господа ја чува Македонија и низините граѓани.
The Russians are coming! The Russians are coming! Is not only a 1966 American Cold War comedy film with an all-star cast, but is also, apparently, the campaign slogan of Dewey and their first and only president in their 22-year existence, Ali Ahmeti. Ahmeti and Dewey are now warning that the Russians will interfere in the upcoming Macedonian elections after they happen, and that they, Dewey, stand for a European Macedonia. After all, their campaign slogan is, yes to Europe, no to Russia. Because, let's face it, they have no policy agenda. In the meantime, the U.S. State Department has added 2 new members of the Macedonian public to its blacklist, and no, none of them are Albanians, because Albanians are perfect. And the election lists are now being assembled. We'll discuss all this and more on this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of the rainy Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
And this is Cvetin Chelemanov in soon to be the Russian Federal Unit of Macedonia.
Oh,
Oblast.
poor Dewey.
Call it an oblast.
Yeah, they just, let's see, their campaign slogan last time was for a green Macedonia, I think, and how'd that turn out? For a green Macedonia, yes, get those Congolese children digging more cobalt in Africa out for the electric batteries for the cars. They have no idea. I mean, Ali Ahmeti he's not a he's a terrorist. He doesn't have a policy agenda or a background on any of this stuff. He just basically, I think he looks at the State Department and says, whatever they say, we'll say. So now, of course, that Russia is the boogeyman. It's yes to Europe, no to Russia, and there's going to be interference in the elections. And the funny thing is, from what I'm reading, and you can tell me what you hear there on the ground, but Ahmeti and Dewey are saying the Russians are going to interfere in these elections coming up in, next month and in May. And yet the intelligence community in Macedonia, even the foreigners, are saying, no, that's not happening.
I mean, that's his comment is just meant to try to solidify U.S. support for his side, for SDSM, trying to spur more, visits from people like James O'Brien or maybe Philip Recurrent, who actually works for them now. So that's a mute point to try to tell us that we shouldn't vote Vumero, that we should vote for Dewey and SDSM, and that they would use Russia as an excuse. And also, he's talking about potential trouble in the country after the elections if his party is not made part of the government. I mean, he does not say this, but it's pretty clear this is what he means, that if Vumero wins the elections and selects the other Albanian bloc, the opposition grouping, as their coalition partner, which Vumero says they will do, Dewey is announcing a return to their terrorism days and inter-ethnic tensions in the country, but they will try to blame Russia for this. So they will try to have somebody attack us. They're going to organize some kind of security incident in the country, but then they will say, look, we warned you, we told you that this might happen because of Russia, not because we are the ones. Obviously, Dewey, or the Albanians in general, they have denied their involvement in the 2012 Good Friday massacre, in the 2015 attack on Kumanova. They always tried to blame Vumero for attacking themselves, for organizing these incidents which only hurt, Macedonia, Macedonians, and Vumero. But, they couldn't. They just had to come up with an explanation, and it was always accusing the side which is the victim, and even though the perpetrators were clearly Albanians, that somehow somebody else did it. And I'm pretty sure that this is their strategy.
Yeah.
After the elections, if they're left out, they will try to spark a war and try to blame Macedonians for this.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's the way they've been operating since 2001 when they tried to rip the country in two. Yeah, so that's but and the funny thing is, so yeah, Vumero will go with the Albanian opposition there, unless they get, I suppose. Well, I guess they have to have an Albanian party, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Between the projections for Vumero seats of 52 to 54,
Yeah.
and then some of the other smaller Macedonian parties, they could easily form a government without any Albanians.
Well, with Maxim Dimitrievski's party, which is seen as joining Vumero after the elections in a coalition, they would still probably be short a few votes, but this can be had from Levica, from somebody in SDSM even, smaller coalition partners in SDSM, because just yesterday Vumero announced actually that they signed on 7 parties from the SDSM list, some Turkish Roma parties, but also the parties of Stoyan Changelov, Ljube Boškovski, not too happy about either of them. Then Buntur is joining Vumero in coalition, if you can believe this. This lunatic Petar Bogojeski from Kruševa, this ultra extravagant conspiracy theory, currently nationalist, previously pro-American politician. Pavle Trajanov, his Demokratski Soyuz party will likely join. I don't think none of them will get any seats except maybe Pavla and the Roma and the Turks. Okay, they actually have some support in public, but it's very possible SDSM will still have several of these parties in their own coalition, and after the elections, it's very likely that they will be the first to jump ship and join Vumero. So Vumero will get to 61, but it's customary to have an Albanian coalition partner, and they will much prefer the Albanian opposition. And if Vumero has 61, they will not face as much blackmail from the Albanians as they would face if they had 50
that's the key, because
45.
Then the Albanian party or whoever it is demands everything. Now the interesting thing though, because both Dewey and the Albanian opposition have said that they will only work with a party that is willing to make the constitutional changes to satisfy the petulant Bulgarians, and Vumero has said no, unless of course the Bulgarians change their constitution. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out with even the Albanian opposition.
So Vumero are currently holding their conference in which they're presenting their program. They're calling it Platform 1198, I think, because they have 1,198 proposals, projects, and I don't know. And it's like energy, environment, economics, everything.
It's a real platform with policy ideas.
Well, yeah, I mean, they do elaborate proposals, and then they actually implement them, at least they did under Gruevski. That's their MO. And on the foreign policy, I still haven't read it, what they said on foreign policy, but yesterday Antonio Miloševski was on Sitel television, and he said, I'm going to announce the position on Bulgaria, and the position is that Vumero is going to insist that the constitutional changes have a delayed effect, or that they only go into effect after Bulgarians are only introduced into the constitution after we join the European Union, or maybe the day before, something like that. So this is something we can put to vote immediately, I guess. They haven't explained the details, but I assume we can have a constitutional amendment which says, okay, we introduce all these nations into the constitution, including the Bulgarians, and then you have like an addition to the amendment. You always have this. It's called preodnien и završni odredbi, like implementation clauses in the amendment, and it can say this amendment is part of the constitution now, but it goes into effect on the day Macedonia joins the European Union. And then we can vote on this immediately after the elections, and then we can go to the Bulgarians and dare them to block us after this was made part of the, or maybe they can even have steps like this element of this set of collective rights which a minority gets go into effect once we open this accession chapter, or close this accession chapter, or I don't know, we have, I don't know, some kind of like interim steps.
Right.
There are elements of this in the Prespa Treaty. Prespa Treaty said we will only change our documents or implement the name change in chapters after the relevant European Union chapter has been opened. And we're not implementing this. We are going ahead of ourselves in implementing Prespa without respecting this break, this clause which is in Macedonia's favor, that we should have to join the EU before we use the name North Macedonia. Mm-hmm. But VMRO can, implement something like this in the constitution and tell the Bulgarians, okay, now let us block us if you dare after we voted on the change.
Right. Okay. And just we're throwing some dates out there. So today is Sunday, March 24. This is episode 170 of Macedonian Content Farmers podcast. And elections are, so we've got presidential, parliamentary elections. First round presidential is April 24, a Wednesday, and the second round and the parliamentary elections are May 8. With Easter being May 5 over there, Easter, well, for the Orthodox world, I should say, Easter for the Catholics and the Protestants coming up next Sunday. Today is Palm Sunday for Catholics and Protestants. So anyway, moving rapidly towards these elections, the election lists are coming out, I believe. I just saw the VMRO list, at least the head of for each of the districts. But they haven't released all the names yet for VMRO, correct?
Yeah, VMRO released the names of the tops of the list, the people who are going to lead the lists, but not the people, the rest of the lists, including because they're apparently still negotiating with turncoats from SDSM and other smaller parties. And SDSM announced, I think their lists are more leaked than announced. Mm-hmm. They announced that two persons who are going to lead every list. They have like a leader, and then they try to make like a female co-leader, like a man and a woman on top of the list, which is hilarious in the case where in the first district where Kovacevsky, the prime minister, is going to lead the list, and the second person is the leader of the Liberal Democratic Party, Monika Zajkova, who is widely rumored to be his lover. And he mangled her announcement. He said, and with me, a co-leader is my colleague, Monika Zajkova. And then he again said my, and then said Monika. So it was very, very awkward, very poorly managed. There are some reports that a number of SDSM officials left the meeting angry. They're denying this because, one of them was put on the spokesman, Darko Kaevsky, he's put on the position number 7 on the Skopje central list. And, it's indicative that normally number 7 would be a winning position for them, especially if they expect to form a government, in which case, Kovacevsky would go into the government and somebody else, Maricic is number 4, for example. So they would enter the government, and then you go up from number 7 to number 5, number 4, and then you join parliament. But it's possible, very likely, that he will not enter parliament from position number 7. So it was a very depressing day for them. The leaks came from pro-SDSM outlets, not from Weber outlets, but from TV stations which are actually closer to SDSM. And apparently Oliver Spasovsky also left the meeting. He has a winning position. He's number 1 in his electoral district in Kumanovo, even after the whole mess he made with the passports and the gang warfare in the country. He was interior minister during all this. But he has a winning position, but apparently did not have enough of his own, his own team, his own faction in the party appointed to positions. In Veles, there is a prominent doctor, NGO activist, and pretty ugly person who is left out. Some of them, like small, not so many famous people, but are on Facebook complaining openly. Like, I expected to be on the list, I'm left out. So they have a little tension here. Well, in Vomero we have, Mitskovsky. In SDSM they have a situation where they had Venko Filipcha, healthcare minister, who is from Ohrid, who normally should run in the Ohrid-Bitola district in the southwest. And I think he led the SDSM list there once. He is moved to the Strumica district in the southeast.
Zaev's area.
Yeah. So Zaev is not himself on the list, but Venko Filipchi is handpicked by Zaev. So he is practically his best friend now, his main colleague, business and political partner. And so practically Venko Filipchi is standing in for Zoran Zaev in the 4th district. And Vomero are sending Alexander Nikolovsky, who is also from Ohrid, like Venko. He's also representing Vomero in the 4th district. And Alexander wants to make a point that he's defeating Zaev in Zaev's own turf. I guess partly because of his own prestige in the party. So this is an interesting development. And then Vomero were discussing whether to run with Lyubcho Kutsarev, until recently head of the Macedonian Academy, pretty outspoken against Prespa, against the Bulgarian deal. They were considering him for presidential candidate. They considered him for head of the electoral list for parliament in the 5th district in Ohrid. He comes from an old Ohrid family known as dissidents in communist times. But no, they did not go with him. They're having the Secretary General of the party, who is from Kichovo, which is close by. He is going to be the candidate here. So this was the one open issue in the Vomero list. They did not, Kutsarev was going to be like a more inspiring, like a more national, patriotic choice, who is not member of the party formally, but I'm not sure even that if he's going to be on the list. It's still not announced. And he's not going to lead the list. Otherwise, Mitskovsky will face off with Kovachevsky in the 1st district. And then, the 4th district, I said Venko Filipcha and Alexander Nikolovsky. And yeah, that's about the main fights we'll have.
You didn't mention back on Silisa Radmila, because she, I've seen her name.
She's not on the list.
She's not on the, oh, okay, interesting.
No. Yeah.
Interesting, okay.
There are not many notable people from her faction, like Despotovsky is not on the list. Maricic he's like the... Petra Shuligov is not on the list. He is like Shekerinska's minion in Skopje. They're like close. So yeah, it's they're lacking like this urban Skopje core on the lists.
Okay, interesting. Well, and lists have to be fully announced by, I'm guessing, the end of the month?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So by the time we have our next podcast, we'll know exactly who that is, and the campaign will Well, again, it's the presidential campaign starts first, and then the parliamentary campaign. But essentially, you, my Macedonian friends, have learned well from the Americans that the campaign never ends. It goes on forever.
Yep.
Oh,
This is our life.
yeah. Sorry about that, but oh well. Now, kind of related to the campaigns, we've got this issue with the blacklist. The current U.S. ambassador Angela Aguilar came in saying that people are going to be put on the blacklist, and there have been a few people, the mayor of Struga, a couple others, but
Ramis Mirk.
sorry.
Ramis Mirk. I
Yeah.
thought you were thinking about the name.
And then, of course, last week, or maybe it was the week before, two more from Macedonia, Stefcho Yakimovsky and Katice Yaneva, who is in jail. So she's in jail. She's been there. She's on the blacklist now. But Stefcho is running for president, the Karposh mayor.
Yep.
And so, he, of course, he came out and denounced this. He said this is election interference. But I suppose he can still, he can still run for president because it's the U.S. State Department. It has nothing to do with Macedonian law, at least at this point.
I mean, we are adopting a law currently in Parliament that would give Aguilar the right to dismiss politicians in the country, practically. The moment that somebody is put on a blacklist, under the law, he or she would be banned from holding office in Macedonia, and there is going to be an automatic investigation into corruption into this person. So, this is like step beyond what we have now when Aguilar sends Miko downtown and he meets people and is persuading them or threatening them. You withdraw from politics. You appoint this person to this position. Like the management of the government, of the public administration, the judiciary, which the embassy already does in full swing. But it's being done, they do not yet have a formal right to override our electoral process. And with this proposal, they will. The embassy will have the right to override our politics, our democracy such as it is. It's stuck in parliament, so Stefcho can continue to run for president. If he is by some miracle elected, there is still no law that would prevent him from becoming president. He's just banned from entering the U.S. along with his sons. But, it's pretty clear he won't be elected and may even be forced to resign as mayor after the elections. One theory is that, he for a moment, he toyed with the Russian angle. He went to Moscow, I think, once. There was some initiative that there is a pro-Russian party formed with, modeled after Putin's United Russia Party, and he was present at this meeting along with Ivan Stojkovic, the leader of the Serbian party, and I think Boris Damovsky from the Jednooki cartoon, like these guys. And this is maybe like a formal reason to be put on kind of like a Magnitsky list. But recently he's become very close with the Albanian real estate lobby, including Pucko, the Jahoski family, Pucko Petrol Company, the guys who are one of the main funders of DUI as a political party. And Stefcho is very openly supporting one of their businesses to build like a large residential complex at the old aluminium plant in Karposh. And they had this lavish, 3D rendering of the place. And Stefcho was out there explaining, look how beautiful it is. So he's obviously in bed with Pucko Petrol. And there was a lot of talk that the embassy will put precisely Pucko on the blacklist for corruption. Because, if they want to show that, as you said, no Albanians are being put on the list other than Ramis Mirko, the first guy who was put on the list. And it's noticeable, even Sasha Ordanovsky, the journalist who keeps still supports and defends Katica Janeva, the last Japanese soldier on an island defending her. And even who has worked for the Albanians all his life, taking money from the Albanian lobby. And even he said, look, this is not fair. No Albanians are on the list. Why is Katica on the list? Blah, blah. So the embassy was expected to put Pucko eventually on the list. And now they're putting a mayor who is working with Pucko. But, it's going to work out well because we see at the moment, you notice probably that Jared Kushner is now announcing that he's the new head of the Open Balkans. And now that Kushner wants to take over the region from Alexander Soros, and he's announcing that he's going to build like this large residential complex at the site of the destroyed Serbian chief of staff building, the one that that Clinton bombed in '99. So now Trump is going to build a Trump Tower on the ruins made by Clinton, and he's going to build a lot of bunker-looking villas on the Albanian coast. So he's covering both main centers of the Open Balkan project, Albania and Serbia. But then we can just give Kushner this location after we seize it from Pucko Petrol and Stevcho Akimovsky. We can give him this, pretty interesting location. And also I mentioned we can give him the tower on Vodno next to the Skopje Cross. There is a tower whose construction Gruevski began, and it can easily be turned. It's supposed to have like a small rotating restaurant, but we can make it a big one, and we can make it look like the letter T. So we can have the cross and T for Trump on top of Vodno, and that might be like our main way to attract the attention of the Trump administration if it happens.
Oh, it's all so ridiculous and farcical. You just kind of have to laugh.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a quick aside. With all the trouble in the world and everything else, and it seems hopeless sometimes. And there's this great story of the late Judge Robert Bork, praise be upon him, sitting down with the late father of the neocons, Irving Kristol, and they're watching the Clarence Thomas hearings, which, of course, famously then Senator Joe Biden tried to derail, Anita Hill, etc. And Judge Bork gets up in a huff and he turns off the TV and he says, well, that's it. That's the end of Western civilization. And Irving Kristol takes a long drag on a cigarette and he says, well, perhaps it might be, but that doesn't mean we can't live well. So I am determined to live well despite all of the trouble in the world. So, well, speaking of interference and whatnot, Macedonians shouldn't feel too bad. Chuck Schumer, the leader of the Senate here in the United States, the other week basically called for new elections in Israel during the middle of a war because he can't stand Netanyahu. And obviously that was something that the White House wanted him to do to try and shore up support amongst the Muslim communities here in America that would typically vote for the Democrats. And
well, they voted wrong.
They voted wrong. They will keep voting until they vote correctly. I mean, for U.S. interferes all over the place, and of course other countries interfere here too, and that's just kind of the world we live in. That's the way it is.
We don't have anybody not interfering, but okay, it's fun to see people have their comeuppance after they have been used as tools of this foreign interference, like Katica Janeva was. And look at her going from 0 to hero back to negative 5,000. Now that she's she has to spend her nights in prison still.
Wow.
And she has a work permit, gets out of prison to work in her son's law office. How that person has a bar exam, a bar license, that's beyond me.
She still practices law during the day?
Her son does, and she's like a
Paralegal.
typewriter. He had her hired, yes. Which even this is beyond her capacity. As we remember, how illiterate and ignorant she was in presenting the cases, and not only she's put on the list, her son is put on the list, and her late husband. So the U.S. Embassy actually banned her from exhuming the body of her husband and carrying it
Seriously?
off to the
I missed
United
that.
States. Yeah.
Oh, it's quickly slipping.
And nobody talks how she was appointed by the U.S., how she was supported by the U.S. It's, finally, I listen to this, I don't know why I do this, maybe to be ready for the podcast, to all these TV shows in the evening, and they're still going, oh, look, the Americans are getting serious about fixing our corrupt judiciary. Look, there is no more, it's not a laughing matter anymore. And they're putting on the blacklist a person who they appointed as prosecutor. They organized this lavish PR campaign around her, printed T-shirts of her, had the BBC come and do a movie about her, and forced Vemera, Gruevski, to accept her as a prosecutor. And now her blacklisting is proof that the United States is serious about the Macedonian rule of law.
Well, yeah, I mean, no. And as I tweeted out, that to Ambassador Aguilar, it said, Macedonians will not take the United States government seriously until people like Ali Ahmeti and Artan Grubi are put on the blacklist. If the U.S. State Department or Treasury are serious about, trying to clamp down on corruption to the extent they can in Macedonia or anywhere else, they'll put those two. I mean, look, in life, Ali Ahmeti and Artan Grubi will eventually get what they deserve. Everything for all of the evil they have committed. And unfortunately, it may not be in this life. It may be in the next life, because they're both going straight to hell. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. So, I'd rather see them get their comeuppance, as you called it, now, in the here and the now. And they may, but I doubt the United States won't touch them, because, as we started off talking about, they threaten violence, and they've carried out riots. I mean, maybe not. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I want to test that either, to see if they actually will, quote unquote, head to the hills again with their guns. And
they will. They will. That's a given.
Well, yeah. I mean,
because otherwise, their alternative is to just sit around. And the Albanian opposition parties have said that they're going to accept this idea of giving a little time to Vemera. Let's see if they can negotiate some kind of a deal. So even if Vemera does not immediately put to a vote this amendment with a delayed effect in the constitution, right? Even if they say, okay, first let's try to negotiate with the Bulgarians, and this takes on for some time, I'm pretty sure that the Albanian opposition parties will say, okay, let's give them a chance to do this, and then immediately get to the business of arresting, long overdue arresting of DUI people, investigating them for corruption. And what are they going to do? They're going to try to flee to Kosovo, where Albin Kurti is actually organizing this campaign against them. They can try flee to Albania or somewhere in Western Europe, or they can but there's going to be minions. Maybe a few of the main guys managed to escape, but there are going to be minions here who are going to be caught up, and these are their relatives, these are their friends, business partners, and they're going to have to try to resist this, and it's going to be easy for them to start shooting. I mean, there's a joke now on Macedonian Twitter that, there is never trouble with the Albanians, like security incidents, when SDSM is in power. But then we tell them, yes, of course, because you do not push back against them. Whatever they want under SDSM, they get, including this hugely corrupt Bechtel deal, which has all the U.S. Embassy diplomats involved in it. Of course, that if you give them everything, why would they shoot at you? But then Vemera is trying to build a country for the Macedonians first and a properly functioning nation state with rights for the Albanians, okay, but Macedonian nation first. And this is why we keep getting attacked, because it's going to be a very difficult, serious operation for VMRO now to bring the Albanians back to a reasonable share of government, like 20-25% of all seats in government, after SDSM gave them the prime ministership and 2 of the 3 main ministries, and there is nobody from SDSM in the government now. They have the defense ministry and nothing else. They have transportation, but that is run by DUI now, because the main infrastructure construction work is the Bechtel deal. They have the defense ministry, which is like a glorified, smaller foreign ministry, and you get to purchase equipment from the US now. We have to buy like armored vehicles from the US and helicopters. This is all you get to do there. You can hire like a few hundred people and maybe take a small cut from the arms procurement deals where the US gets the large cut. I mean, US gets the whole deal. You have a small cut in commission. And that's it. They have nothing else in the government now. There was even Vasko Iftov had a debate with one of the DUI guys who was being planned for prime minister. And he said, I'm talking to Ali Ahmeti about this, and we were saying, do we demand that an Albanian prime minister over 2 years? And he says, Ahmeti is telling me, listen, we are overdoing it. We are asking for so much, and we are getting so much, that we're going to ruin SDSM. We're going to have an opposite reaction among Macedonians. We're going to bring VMRO back into power, and VMRO is going to have more legitimacy and a stronger mandate, and we're going to make a problem for ourselves. Let's not kill the host yet. Let's try to leech the host reasonably.
So that's Ali Ahmeti was saying that?
Ahmeti and what was his name? He's now some ombudsperson in the country, official. He was going to be prime minister.
Well,
yeah.
This is a conservative podcast. We're conservatives. And of course, one of the things that we've learned here in America, and we have some very powerful voices in the African American community here, conservatives, as well as others. I mean, I like what Douglas Murray, who's not an American, he's British, but what he says, he says it about skin color. He says your skin color is the least interesting thing about you because it's an immutable characteristic. You can't change. I think the same thing in a way with ethnicity. The Albanians in Macedonia are arguing that by dint of essentially an immutable characteristic, ethnicity, a person should be the prime minister, the interior minister, the president, what have you. That's the only qualification. And of course, that is a horrendous way. Number one, it's a horrendous way to run a government. Number two, it's degrading to the people of that ethnicity in this case, or skin color, if we're talking about African Americans. So it is just it's wrong on every single level. People should be elected as president or appointed as prime minister or interior minister or whatever based on their competence. If there was an extremely competent ethnic Albanian running for president of Macedonia who said this is Macedonia is the homeland of the Macedonians and other ethnic minorities that live here and there's rights for all, yada yada yada, fine. But there is no such person, or if there is, he or she has not come forward. But to run a campaign in a country saying, these people should be in these positions because of their essentially immutable characteristic of ethnicity is wrong on every single level. But anyway, that's because we're conservatives, and of course, Ali Ahmeti and State Department and Syriza are progressive, liberal, Jacobin atheists.
Yeah.
Anyway, Right. What else do we have here? I have a farmer's pick. It's been a very long time.
It's been a while.
Very long time, yeah. This is so it's interesting. It's a Danish indie band called Efterklang. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly.
I'm sure you are.
And they did a documentary which apparently has won some awards called Efterklang, the Macedonian Band, and they've done this documentary in front of the it's the Macedonium in Kruševo, and they've got a single as well that goes with it. The single is called "Getting Reminders," but it's filmed in Macedonia, and the documentary is as well. So anyway, I just thought it was interesting. I watched the trailer of the Macedonium Band on the YouTube, and of course they're with other Macedonian. They put together a bunch of Macedonian musicians for this whole thing, and anyway, it's a neat little highlight of Macedonia and musicians from outside of Macedonia and Macedonian musicians working together to highlight Macedonia, and we'll put a link to that. So
Yeah, that's interesting. We have to look it up.
yeah, so yeah, that's our farmer's pick. We need to reinstate our farmer's pick. We need to end these podcasts with good news. So because there's plenty of good news, as in Charles Dickens, the author of A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge, the three ghosts: Christmas past, Christmas present, Christmas future. The ghost of Christmas present tells Scrooge, there are more good things in this life than you can possibly imagine. So, and that's absolutely true. And Macedonia has.
Yeah, but they don't get the clicks. I mean, okay, our bad news don't get the clicks either, but
Yeah, that's
at least we're trying.
that's how technology and communications and everything is further corrupted to human nature, which of course all part of the crooked timber of humanity. Crooked timber of humanity, as Kant says. So anyway, all right. Well, let's end with that. Some good news. Everybody can listen to our rant about bad news first, and then get down to this farmer's pick on the Macedonian band and Efterklang.
To this Danish guys. Yeah.
Efterklang. I just like saying that. It's a cool word. Efterklang. So anyway. All right. So again, this is March 24. We'll get this out maybe today, maybe tomorrow, and then we'll. And then next time we have a podcast, it will be April, and we'll be barreling towards the first round of presidential elections and the start of the whole official parliamentary elections campaign.
And we'll see who else is on the blacklist.
Yeah. Don't hold your breath.
Hope it's not me.
All right, Svetin. Good talking to you.
You too, buddy. Take care.